So, hello everybody. Before this tutorial starts, it will be about setting up Octane in a easy and understandable way. So, a step-by-step guide for Octane in Houdini. I want to show you a few things. This is currently my this year Patreon board. So if you want to join my Patreon, you now can learn this stuff. This month I did alienated fabrics, so you can create something like this or something like this. I went to Paris to the Iris van Herpen exhibition. It was really astonishing and really nice. Yeah, and I did a Patreon inspired on that, so you can create, for example, something like this or something a little bit more complex in that kind of direction. So symmetrical organic shapes, non-symmetrical, and then also some line stuff, just copying things, manipulating things with attributes, etc. And of course, some fabric. So vellum simulation is also in there. So you can join now. The link will be down in the description or on my website, etc. You will find it somehow. So let's close that. And what I want to do, I want to first start with a simple simulation or just a simple geometry setup that we have something to basically render. You will start with your Houdini probably like this. And what I usually do, I collapse those on here and I drag that a little bit more to the center. So I will have a big viewing space that I can, for example, split with Control 1, 2, 3, 4. And also a cool thing is that I have a big network view window. Of course, you can also split that again if you need to. If you, for example, got several subsolvers, DOPNets, etc. The cool thing is now we can just press P on our keyboard, and you saw a little hint down here that the parameter window is basically enabled. And that's everything. So when we now press tab, type in geometry, we will have a geometry container and we will have also our parameter window here on the right side, which I think is pretty cool to have. So let me just switch back again here. And we don't need this menu on top. I will place down a geometry, and what I want to do is to rename that. So let's just call this R&D 001. What I thought, we could do just some simple particles. So what I want to do, I want to create, for example, let's go for a line. Go into the viewport here. I will press enter in the viewport, so in the scene view, and our little gimbal will show up here. And you can, for example, rotate the line, you can move the line. Let's go back, and just by holding the control button, we can move it by a certain degree, or like a certain stepping size. And let's just go for 90 degrees here. And to see the line a little bit better, just press D in the viewport. And what I want to do, I want to basically go to background, color scheme, and then to dark. And now we can see our line way better. And what I want to do, I want to get a match size here, so the line will get centered. And then I want to just place another null here, or our first null and call that out for scatter, because we will scatter particles onto this little line, and we'll do that now. So press tab again, and what I want to do is place down a pop network. Get it down, and you can already see we will spawn a bunch of particles here. So dive inside here. We are now basically in a particle simulation. Wow, that's cool. So let's get started. Because I think particles are pretty fun, especially when you don't use them as you should. So you can do all sorts of things with those kind of little particle thingies. And I think the cool thing is what you then can easily do to like visualize that. Just place down a pop wind, connect that to the pre-solve. Well, let's just also get a null in here, call that in forces. And now we know we need to plug all our forces basically in here. And on the pop wind, let's go for an amplitude of 0.5. And now you can see we created our first little particle simulation, which looks already pretty funny. Of course, it's not that special, but I think we will get there somehow. So we got our particles. Now, of course, you can use like a wind, etc. Another thing is on the birth tab, you can basically, let's just get it through here, or on the constant birth rate, you can play around with that. So, for example, only 25 particles per second, or like double the amount, 50, or you go for 5,000, or you can go like for 50,000 here. That looks pretty cool, because when you do it like in an early state, those could be lines, so you can experiment with that. And yeah, so this is like the constant birth rate, but what you also can do, you can zero them out, and then for example go for 150, and then type in here $FF equals 1. So this is like a basic expression that will enable, or just will say to the pop source, hey pop source, if a frame is not equal to 1, don't emit like any particles. And after 1 comes 2, so we will not emit particles, so we will just emit those 150 particles, and after that we will do nothing but, for example, apply forces, etc. But what we can do, for example, with that kind of setup, we could trail those particles. So this is, I think, pretty cool to do. So let's just trail them, and for example, for the trail length, we can go for 240. So this will be our timeline. And now you can see we'll trail those particles all the way back to our timeline, basically. And yeah, now you got your trails and can play with them, which is pretty nice. You could use them for a hair simulation. So if you want to do that, let's just quickly set one up. We got our trail here. What I want to do, get an attribute delete, get some stars in here, 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, and 4 stars. So we will basically delete all attributes. And what you could then do after that is, for example, a group expression. Then we will need a resample, and get a resample between here. And when you now enable the point, the display point function here, you can see the particles trails looks not as good as they were before. So what we basically did, we resampled the lines down a bit in their own resolution. So let's go smaller here, and we'll basically give them a higher resolution again. Then for the group expression, let's get a name in here, for example, group grp pin. And what I want to do, I want to write a simple expression here, at curve u equals 1. And then I want to set that on points. And I enabled the curve u function here. The curve u function is that we will get an attribute on our lines. And this attribute is basically a value between 0 and 1. Just visualize that quickly. So blue is 0 and red is 1. And when you will have a look at your geometry spreadsheet, you can also hide all attributes and then view, for example, curve u. And you can see we will have a list of tables. A list here of little float values that will represent the curve u attribute on each curve, and we can play with that curve u attribute. So for example, we can remap it to a scale, or we could, let's just give you a visualization. What we can do with that, a point warp. I will show you that in a second, but just so you know what a curve u is. What I want to do is bind the curve u. So I will import the curve u. And then I want to make a ramp. So I can remap it, ramp parameter. And I want to export, so bind export for p-scale. Now I want to dive up. And what I want to do, I want to place a copy to points, get the lines into the second input, and a cube into the first input. And now you can see nothing. Perfect. But when we will, for example, choose a preset here, hill, and of course dial that thing way down. Let me just get a multiplier in here. So multiply. And I want to get a parameter. When we go for 0.01, you can now see we basically got our little cubes copied onto our curve, and now we can scale them referenced on the curve u attribute. So this is like a really nice way to remap stuff, for example, like stepping. So they will get a little bit bigger with each step, or round. And of course you can also tweak it to your liking. So this is basically curve u, and we will use curve u here to set a group for the endpoints, or when you type in 0 for the beginning points for our quick hair simulation. Velum hair, velum configure hair, get the pin points to the group pin, and get a velum solver with gravity enabled, so we will not disable gravity. And of course, what we need to do before, we need to time a shift. This is basically a cool node to freeze stuff. We'll time shift frame 240. So basically the end of the timeline is now frozen, and we can then go into our next simulation and simulate our hair here, which is also pretty cool. looks cool to me. So of course this is a really simple example, but you can do a lot of cool stuff with that. Maybe we will use that for rendering, but another thing I wanted to show you is simple advection method. We'll get the pop wind here, get rid of the pop wind. I'm sorry, pop wind. We don't need you anymore because we will do an advanced force on our little particles. So what we will do, we will create a box. And you can press E on your keyboard to basically template the box. And I want to make it bigger. So for example, 5. And after this big box, I want to place down a volume. And I want to get a vector volume and I want to name it val. And I want to go to set my uniform sampling by size. That's middle mouse click, 125,000 voxels. And we can reduce that a little bit to get, for example, 1,000,000. After that, I want a volume VOP. So place it down. And what I want to do, I want to write a noise into our volume. So for example, let's go for a more standard one. For example, the not the golf curve, the curl noise. And I want to position into position. And I want to basically export the noise out to velocity. Let's call that val. And you can see something like that. We can then, for example, remap here our frequency. We can play with the amplitude, with the roughness, attenuation, turbulence, step size, etc., etc. We can also play, for example, of course, with the type of the noise. I will just use the standard Berlin noise here. And after that, what I want to do is place down another null. And I want to call that out velocity, val for short, at vect. And I want to then import that volume field into our particle simulation. And we can easily do that by pop at vect by volumes. Add that in here. And then, for example, you can press here and get the out val at vect. Or another thing, what you could do, Shift W and just drag and drop here. We will set that to update velocity and to trace. And now you can see we basically will advect our particles with our velocity field, which is pretty cool, I think. There are several versions. You can also use the force version. So play around with that, play around with the noise. And we will then freeze again our simulation. Looking cool. Of course, they will somehow escape our little box. Maybe 0.5. We will just only advect them to the end. That looks already pretty cool. Okay, then we can freeze that and use that again for our beautiful air simulation. Because why not? I think that looks. Of course, they could be too long. Yeah, no. Let's go and reduce them a little bit. And what I want to do, let's just do that. What I want to do, of course, we want to get into Octane, but I also want to like show you stuff. What we can do, we can dive in here and get a pop attract. pop attract, please. And then we can get a pop axis force. Of course, we can also dial in here the pop attract by volume. That this could also be like a thing to do, which I think would be pretty cool. And speed 2 and suction speed 0.5. And then what we could do, let's have a look at the thickness. That should look fine. Hair resolution also looks fine. Oh, and what I want to do is disable gravity, because we can do that here and it's cool. And now you can see the hair will get like swirled in, sucked like to the center. But I think the rotation is a little bit too high. So let's go for 0.2 and then go for like a 1 here, or a 2, sorry. Of course, the center looks not that cool, I think, with the line. So we could use another starting point. So let's get the match size and just place a sphere here. And the cool thing is feature, polygon, same again here. Okay, let's play this. I think that looks a little bit cooler. It's like crumbled in there. What I want to do, maybe I want to change like the thickness a little bit and get the thickness a little bit thicker. Not too thick, but a little bit. So for example, something like 0.5. That should work okay. And let's use a state like frame 29. And again, we can freeze that frame, so 29. And now when we scrub our timeline, nothing will happen. Of course, if you want a simulation and you want to render a simulation out, don't do that. Just use okay, then I will add a sweep here. We can go grid for the end cap, and for example, also the sweep you can manipulate, of course. Sweep and do something like that. So it's like thinner again, like just like the curve view with the little cubes. It's like thin and getting a little bit thicker. Of course, we will get here intersection, but let's just leave it like that. And get maybe a subdivide down. I don't know. Cool. And the cool thing is we'll still have our curve battery. Where is it? Oh, wait. Need to like press the visualizer. And we can use that, for example, for rendering. So now, finally, after, I don't know, 24 minutes. 24 minutes, guys. We can then set up Octane. What we need a camera. Let's place down a camera. Let's call this camera OOC for Octane. This is our R&D camera 001. Go to the View tab, Aperture. Let's go for 36 and a focal length of, I don't know, 85 millimeters. Cool. Resolution. Let's just leave it like that. I think that's fine for now. Then we will need a material network. So OC mat, and we will need a RUB network. This will be Octane out. Let's dive inside the Octane out first and place down not a redshift, an Octane sub. So let's call this Octane out 001. And what we already can do, we can press Shift W again, or do it with the little picking operator tool here. We can import our camera. Camera here, and then we can right click, copy parameter, right click, paste relative reference. So now the IPR camera will always be our render camera. So keep that in mind. You can do that, you don't need to do it. Okay, this is cool. Just leave everything here for default. And we need a render target. So basically the Octane brain, so to say. Going to the material network, I know it's weird, but you basically set it up in the material network. So we need an Octane render target. Place it down. I usually press C and color this black because I love black. No, but also to have a reminder in my head. Okay, black, this is the render target. Everything that's like green, for example, those are my Octane materials. I see green, I know, okay, that's a material, I can dive in there, I can create a material. And for the render target, of course, I can also dive in there, manipulate a few things, etc. But I know this will be my my render target, basically. So OC render targets custom 001. Whoops. Custom. And what I want to do is to get path tracing. I want to get a universal lens, and I want to get a texture environment. Okay, quality, let's just pipe up the depth on here. Light, AI light sampling, adaptive sampling, enable that. Then with the camera, there are a lot of things, so you can go through those, which is pretty cool because it gives you a lot of flexibility, I think. But we just leave that as default, but of course you can play around with that. Okay, camera mode, thin lens is fine. Imager, this is also fine. Let's just use here. Environment. Let's use a texture environment. I already basically converted them, but you can also, of course, just use SRE. Okay, post-processing. I think everything should be set up correctly. And then we will just need to drag and drop again and the target custom in here, or you can just pick it. Cool. Then we can dive into our camera. Get a viewing, a nice framing here. Then we can go to the Octane tab, or I got a hotkey for that. So for me, it's Control Alt Shift T, and then Octane will basically start up the IPR. In a second, yeah. Now it's there. Cool. Okay, now we got Octane here and it's rendering. And we need a material. We need a material. What you also can do, by the way, in the Octane Render target, under the Universal Camera tab, the autofocus is by default basically enabled. So you can disable that, and for example, now I can pick, I can pick, maybe I will hit it. To hit those lines is sometimes really painful. Maybe I need to refresh it for a second. Then now you basically can set manually the focus. should work. Autofocus. Distance. Let's go like a lot. Let's go a little bit more into the mess here and try to pick one because it should, yeah, it works. Okay. Yeah, sometimes it's like, okay, it works. Sometimes it's like hard to get those little tiny. Yeah, now we set up or will set up a quick material. So what I want to do, after the subdivide, I want to drop down a material, OC, let's call it OC mat. And I want to create a material in our material network. So Octane Material Builder. And let's call it Octane Mat RD001. And then we can just link that our material and get a standard surface. And now you can see when we will render that, we will have basically a grayish material on our lines here. And what I can do, I can, for example, fire up the HDRI a little bit more to get it a little bit brighter. And of course, I could rotate it a little bit. And another thing, importing attributes. So go to the Octane tab and then you can place the object parameters. And you will get another window here. And then, for example, we could import our curve view attribute. This is a float attribute. So point float attributes, curve view, where is it? ABC here, curve view. And then we can use the curve view attribute. Then we can get a float vertex attribute. Type in curve view. And then we could use a gradient, tool gradient, to remap incoming values to, for example, the base color. From currently black to white. So it will not be that spectacular. But I think that's pretty cool to then have like the ability to basically remap those values. What you also could do, you can, for example, for a specular material, or like a glass material, and remap the transmission to that, which is also pretty to be able to do. And yeah, so I think we will wrap that up now. So have fun with this kind of little tutorial, play around, and I will see you on my Patreon. Drop me a DM, leave a comment if you want. You can also subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.